Good morning or good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the show. This is Psycho Silver. My name is Jerome. I do hope that today you're counting your wealth in ounces and also that you're holding your word, especially to yourself. Thank you for joining me. This is a news show and I got a whole bunch of news for us. A few of the things that we look at on this show specifically. I spend hours every night searching the internet for specific information, any kind of fresh perspective, especially on the topics of the ruthless reign of the dollar, how the higher interest rates that the Fed is imposing is having impact all around the world, and what is the intended outcome that they are looking for, and how does it relate to us, and which ways might this be steering us towards the CBDC, or is it possible that these moves that we're seeing the Fed make is steering us away from that reality? So we are tracking the Great Reset and especially potentially, hopefully, some sort of Great Awakening. Also on this show, we're paying close attention to what I call the dark psychology of poverty. We want to look at news and articles and interesting information pertaining to what makes people such impulsive spenders and why in this era of so much opportunity do people choose to live paycheck to paycheck? What are the factors that cause people to behave that way? Why has education fallen so short in making people into these impulsive consumers? And is it intentional? Also on the show, of course, especially, we're paying close attention to the situation with silver and the Comex. Got some good news on the Comex today, or bad news depending on how you look at it. And also the LBMA. And what's less talked about is there is a huge stockpile of silver there's a Shanghai exchange. So we're keeping an eye on precious metals and the silver reserves throughout the world. And are they indeed truly being drained? And what comes after that? The silver squeeze, the silver raid is of huge importance to us. And we're going to look at that at any opportunity. Some days there's more news than others. But every evening I spend hours of my time going through all my carefully curated bookmarks and social media accounts looking for interesting information about all these topics. And then I only take the most interesting of that and I put it into a package that's this show and I bring it to you. And so hopefully by doing that, I will have done you a service. But we got plenty to look at tonight. So let's jump into the show. And to start us off today, we have the most interesting thing happening here with the Comex dropping over 2 million ounces in one day. This is very satisfying. I was starting to wonder if we're going to continue dropping or if we were getting into more of a place where it was going to hold in the same area for a long time. And so this is really great. Ditch the Deep State, our favorite poster on Wall Street Silver, writes, 2.1 million ounces silver departed from the registered category, dropping Comex registered to 36 million. Today it was all from MTB, that was the vault. 27% reduction in one day out of their vault. Plus 1,300,000 ounces net silver out of the vault, along with 3.5 tons of gold. Very exciting, guys. Very exciting. And here we do have this chart very clearly demonstrating that the squeeze is on. Let's go ahead and read the rest of this. He writes, below is the plot of the 1 month change in the Comex silver for each category. While it's actually changed over 21 business days, but we don't need to concern ourselves with short months and long months. Focusing on the green line, registered silver, today's drop brings the 1 month change to 7.5 million ounces. You can see that the registered has been dropping between 4 and 14 million per month since the default. Very, very awesome. We are getting down to the nitty gritty. Whatever they're able to do to paper this over, it appears it will not be working anymore. But there's one thing that I do need to say on this. This is very exciting and I think that it's meaningful, okay? But let's just prepare ourselves mentally, okay? If we do see another huge drop of silver onto the Comex, we get them all the way down to 28 million ounces and things are looking desperate. And then 100 million ounces comes out of nowhere and they re-up the vault. I would say that's not a time to be discouraged. This is something they would do. And I definitely think that we need to mentally prepare ourselves for this situation. But if we do reach that, I think it's really time to double down our efforts, because an event like that would definitely be there to make you feel discouraged, to make you confused. So let's not overplay our hand on this. Let's take it for what it is. And things are definitely happening. And as we all know, all this silver could disappear in one fell swoop. And as we all know, these numbers cannot be completely trusted. So I think that we're definitely having an effect, and we just got to pretty much stick to the plan on this one, and it's going to turn out wonderfully for all of us. Okay, on to the next piece of news here. And here we did have a post from the Bullion Star, and I just want to give you the highlights here. This is written by Ronan Manley, and he writes, Comex deliverable silver is far less than imagined, as 50% of eligible is not available. This is what I've been saying. Back in April 2020, during the LBMA Comex gold crisis of 2020, when gold prices on Comex diverged nearly $100 higher than the prices in London, and the LBMA and CME rushed out multiple combined statements trying to assure the market about healthy gold stocks in London and New York, while at the same time scrambling to send shipments of gold bars from London to New York. There appears to be some intriguing correspondence between the CME and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. What is this? Get my highlighter on. Specifically, that correspondence, which was a submission by the Comex to the CFTC certifying a doubling in position limits on gold futures trading from 3,000 contracts to 6,000 contracts, contained the bombshell admission that 50% of eligible gold in Comex should be subtracted from the deliverable supply, since that portion of the gold in eligible category is held by long-term investors. So it's in the vault, but it's not for sale, basically. And it does seem like they up the position limits to help themselves be able to pile on those shorts to keep the price. They actually had a limit on how short they could be, and they doubled that limit just to make sure that the price is contained. This is big news. So instead of all the gold in the Comex approved vaults being available to back Comex gold futures tradings, the CME was saying no, the estimated deliverable supply of gold is equal to registered plus 0.5. Very big and interesting silver news to start us off. Very exciting. So what's the next big milestone? I guess it has to be 30 million ounces, right? And I did see a post. I can't remember if I kept it in my stack or not, but some people with the knowledge say around 30 million ounces is when you're going to start to see some stress on the physical market. Big time. We will find out. We're so close, guys. I've been here from the beginning. I was on day one of the silver squeeze, the silver raid, on Wall Street silver, on Wall Street bets from day one. In fact, well, of course, that's a lot of us, but I've been stacking a hell of a lot longer than that. So this is very exciting news. On to the next thing here. I did want to highlight, this is big news from the day. We did see this really, I don't know how to describe it. It's a really terrifying, sobering, I think I'll settle on the word startling. This was a startling event that we saw in China, and the guy being escorted out there is the former president, and you can see this guy just being manhandled here, under the arm. He doesn't want to go, and this is pretty dramatic also for, I would say, for Asian people to be handled under the arm like that by a security or an usher is very, very disrespectful in the Asian culture to be touching someone like that. And you can see here that President Xi doesn't even make eye contact with him. He completely looks away. And so the rumor on the internet is, and this is what I'm seeing, and one thing I know is that it's kind of worthless speculating on this stuff because we don't really know, but President Xi serving a third term as the president or the prime minister over in China. And we will see upcoming here, there was really significant happenings in the Chinese markets today. Why don't we look at that next? Here we have a tweet from FX Hedge saying China state banks are ordered to buy stocks to contain selling. So we do have another central bank here interfering, but not with the bond market, with the stock markets. And one thing that I've noticed is that I do believe that's the rumor about the plunge protection team, that the plunge protection team does buy stocks when there's some serious dips, that they have a terminal, they have a computer with unlimited funds set up, and they're interfering in our stock market, but they're not supposed to be doing that. That is speculation. That is complete conjecture. That's a good word. It's conjecture that the plunge protection team or any entity of the government interferes with the stock market. But we see here in China, it's pretty openly admitted, and that is what a centrally planned economy is going to do, right? Makes sense. And here we have a tweet from Tabby Costa. He writes, "We just saw the largest annual depreciation in the Chinese yuan in 27 years. China is much closer to having a full-blown banking and currency crisis than winning the hegemonic war against the US." So we have China in the same boat as everyone else, stuck between high interest rates and out of control bond market. And on the other end, you do have the inflation. And you can see here just by the moves of the currency that they are inflating an insane amount. And hence the dramatic depreciation here. Also here we can see all these publicly listed Chinese stocks, those that are listed in the US, taking a huge dive. That's pretty brutal. I don't know a whole lot about this stuff, but it does seem that we do have a theme there. There's many things acting in tandem. We have the depreciation of the currency. We have the stocks here taking a huge dive. We have President Xi being sworn in for his third term. And we did see the former president being escorted out of the chambers in what many people are saying is a display of power by President Xi. And also worth mentioning, we have covered on this show several times now that there is indeed an economic war that's escalating between the US and China, and they've been cut off from the supply of essential components that they would be using to make the most sophisticated computer chips and semiconductors. And we did see that it appears that Biden has taken very aggressive action towards what they've described as a decapitation of the high-end chip market in China. So there's a lot of things going on there. And I will segue into an interesting piece of information on this right here. Right here, we do have a video that's poking fun at the BlackRock CEO, Larry Fink. This user writes, this is Will Hild, he writes, "CEO Larry Fink loves Chinese Communist Party because he imagines using your money and ESG to run our country the same way." Check this out.
Markets don't like uncertainty. Markets like actually totalitarian governments where you have you have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors. Markets don't like uncertainty.
So Larry Fink's letting you know at BlackRock they are into forcing behaviors, and their mandate comes from the ESG. ESG is short for environmental and social governance, and that will be the paradigm, the impetus to give BlackRock the authority to force behavior. And you have Larry Fink there very clearly telling you what he thinks of what he thinks of how things ought to be done, which leads me directly into the big juicy find that I made. I'm so excited. I did discover this guy named Tom Luongo. So he has been making the rounds on some podcasts, and I'm going to check them all out. But I did listen to one podcast in full, and I would love to play you a clip from it. But Tom Luongo here, he's a free-thinking guy, and he's got some very unique ideas about what's actually happening with the Fed And I'll just read what he writes here. This is in response to breaking market news. This morning, they write, U.S. Treasury Secretary Yellen, regulators are working to monitor private fund leverage and develop policies to reduce the risk of runs in money markets and open-end bond funds. And Tom's response here was translation. We are worried our ESG enforcer, Larry Fink, will go tits up when the Fed raises another 75 basis points next week. And so we are awaiting already. Again, it seems like these events come very quickly around. We are reaching the point in time where we can see the Feds raising rates again. And before I get into, I'm going to explain what Tom thinks here, but I will say first, I've been very confused and looking for information, not finding good information about what really is the deal with the Feds raising rates the way that they have. And so we found out that the dollar milkshake theory is 100% true. And the thing with Jerome Powell is that everyone's going to be mad at him no matter what he does. And I'm resisting the temptation. And I guess this is part of my personal growth and what I'm learning about studying macroeconomics is it's completely ridiculous to think in terms of good guys and bad guys. Everyone is looking for their own interests. And I do think that it's without a doubt, you do have a loosely associated cartel of banking elites that have a common goal and they're trying to implement their policies, but it's not always so neat and clean about who's with who and who's trying to do what. I hope that makes sense. But every move that I've seen this Jerome Powell make, and I'm sure he's got a council of people that he's conferring to and making these decisions, but everyone's in the same position. They said that he would not be able to raise rates at all without completely destroying the economy and forcing the economy to collapse, that we could never even get over 1% again, that we were going to stay at zero or go into a negative interest rates, modern monetary theory, and that we were destined to inflate the currency away. And that was the destiny before we do finally have the central bank digital currency unveiled. Well, other people were pointing out that perhaps they do raise rates and they destroy the whole market, and we get the CBDC anyways, that is also potentially a part of the plan. But the theory that this Tom Luongo is putting forward here is that in raising the interest rates, our federal government is positioned in a way where it's going to put extreme pressure upon the European Union and the Chinese communists at the same time, but that we're not nearly in the same category of risk as they are. And so potentially this is just food for thought. We do know that Jerome Powell appears to be acting in contradiction to what the EU wants, in contradiction to what Janet Yellen wants. So we saw even last week. Let's get that article up real quick. Let me show you this. Here, I just wanted to get this headline here to demonstrate. This is from the Wall Street Journal, and this came out. This is October 3rd. I thought it was more recent than that, but it's still the point. UN calls on the Fed and other central banks to halt interest rate increases. And so I don't know quite what to make of this, but it does appear that there's some discord there. It does appear that this Jerome Powell is not marching to the beat that he's supposed to. The UN's calling on him to knock it off. And I have seen so many times Janet Yellen directly contradicting Jerome Powell. And I guess the safe thing to assume, what I would automatically assume, is that they're just using some trickery. They're getting some cognitive dissonance going when they do these things. But perhaps, is it possible that they really are at odds and we were not supposed to have these interest rate hikes right now? And also to have the federal government and the commercial banks, the national banks, position in a way where maybe they do take hits, but not nearly at the same severity as the Chinese communists, as the European Union with all their Klaus Schwab and ESG and social governance, and CBDC would fall into that category. So is it possible that the people that are being hurt the most by these unexpectedly higher interest rates are exactly the same people that do want to implement this great reset. Is that possible? I hope you followed that. This is big. We're going to keep a close eye on this theory. This is conjecture. This is a hypothesis, but it really does, guys, it really does fit in. It makes a lot of sense. And I almost didn't even do a show today because I was following up on this so much, but I had to do a show. But I really want to flesh this out and understand it a little better because this is big, big stuff. So let's I'm going to pull a clip from this podcast real quick, and we'll listen to a few minutes of what he said recently. This what's his name? Tom Longo, excuse me. Let's check this out. All right, guys, you're going to want to listen carefully to this.
I haven't even explained half of this fucking story yet. This is the worst part about this. This is the problem, is that this is that complicated, right, Marty? I don't mean again, this is not about my ego or any of this shit. This is about what I've had to do in order to try and make all the...
Well, I'm sitting here and I'm just like...
How does it play out? It plays out that the Fed has much more room to raise rates.
I saw you tweet and you think they're going to go to 7%.
6%. I don't know about 7. I mean, everyone, don't ever take me serious about that stuff because I just send numbers out there just to tweak people. It's like, oh, you think you're triggered at 3.25% Fed funds rate? Fuck you. They're going to 6. 6? What are you kidding me? You're a lunatic. I'm like, oh. But I want people to think. I do it on purpose. I don't know what 4.5. It's probably going to be somewhere between 4.5. If all they do is raise to 4.5, 5% and hold for 6 months or a year, is that a pivot? Are you kidding? Is that area? No, it's not a pivot. 5% on the Fed funds rate, for fuck's sake. Get over yourself. Holy shit, dude. Come on. You were thinking everybody was screaming in January. They go to 1%, they'll crash the markets and they'll have to give it all back and go back to the zero bound. We were at 3%, and nobody's died yet except Europe, Sri Lanka, the Bank of England.
Except Europe, the Bank of England.
But it's all Europe. Lagarde is running out of... Lagarde is the one. She's the one who can't hold on to credit. She's the one who's watched currency over the course of 15 months, drop from $1.22 to 96 cents. And the yields on her debt at the same time, mind you, go from negative 0.6% on the German Bund to 2.3% on the German Bund 10-year.
Yeah, they're getting squeezed.
You don't think carry trades have been blown up? Interest rates, swaps have been blown up? You don't think all this stuff is everybody's hedge books have been blown up?
Well,
they're all screeching.
Yeah, when you factor leverage into the equation as well.
Leverage?
I haven't even talked leverage yet.
Right.
And who's stuffed to the gills with all this leverage friggin' sovereign debt? These sovereign debt?
Yeah, I mean, that's
the people
part of the guilt problem, right?
Who are in worse shape, having been who are stuffed into all of these leveraged debt, the ones whose interest rates were even lower.
All right. I want to just sit back and listen to the whole podcast, but you got to go and check this out. It is TFTC on Rumble. What a fucking interesting interview. I'm all over this, guys. This is some of the most interesting information I've encountered in quite a while. And if you haven't been told, if you didn't know this already, we do have a new prime minister in the UK, and we do have this Richard Medhurst pointing out that the new prime minister of the UK, unelected by the British people or even the Tories, he didn't give a single debate. He didn't give an interview or a statement about what his program is. We all know he is stinking rich and worked for Goldman Sachs. But hey, he's the first non-white prime minister. So it's all good, right, guys? I did see there was a post floating around the internet. I should have saved it. I didn't save it. But they were pointing out how allegedly this guy is more wealthy than King Charles. And here I got to point out, of course, you knew it was coming. According to Disclosed TV, just in, Biden administration set to warn about threats to the nation's election infrastructure ahead of the midterms. An intelligence bulletin is slated to be issued this week, Politico reports. Man, it feels like they're a little late to doing this. Aren't they a little late? But I remember the last election was the safest, the most secure election. We did have the cronies in the three-letter agency march out one after another after the 2020 election and tell us how safe and secure and perfectly pristine the election was. Pristine, and anyone that told you otherwise was a denier. What was the word that they used? I don't know. They called it the big lie, right? The big lie. But here we go. we're going to keep close attention to see if this political report does come to pass. And now all of a sudden, so I do remember 2016, we were compromised because of Russia, right? And now in 2020, it was pristine. It was perfect. It was the safest, most secure election ever. And here we are with this election rolling around. And it appears that we have threats to the infrastructure. We'll be back on this one very soon, I have a feeling. And here we do have a user on Gab writing, "This is Diamond Hands Are Forever." And in reference to the Consumer Confidence Report, they're telling us that over 50 is good and under 50 is bad. And he says, "Sleep well, friends. Nukes incoming tomorrow." And we do see this forecast of the PMI index saying that it's probably going to come in at 46.6. And so could that be a catalyst to some major moves to the downside tomorrow? Well, we'll find out, but I do appreciate this unique post here. Thank you. Diamond Hands Are Forever. This gentleman deserves a follow here. Followed. Thank you, sir. And here, just in a quick follow-up and continuation, it was really prevalent in the news today, the claim that Russia suspects the Ukraine intelligence to be orchestrating a plan to detonate a dirty bomb to rile up the international community into taking action against Russia. So they've been warning of this plan for days on end, and we've seen it permeate throughout the media. We've seen it permeate throughout governments. And here we have, again, this is a separate incident of these guys reiterating what they believe is the plan. And furthermore, here's the real mindfuck right here, is I did see the whole idea reversed on itself. And now, according to some Western media outlets, that Russia is saying that they suspect Ukraine of possibly using a dirty bomb in one of its own cities as a catalyst to preemptively strike, while they're turning it around and they're saying that Russia put out this story because they want to justify a Russian preemptive strike with nuclear weapons. I don't know how that works, but everything's turned on itself, of course. But if we do see any interesting news on that, I'm sure we'll find out. Yet another iron in the fire. Here we had a funny tweet from Ted Edge. He writes, "Can someone good at math explain to me how inflation is at 9%, but everything costs 40% and more?" That was a good one. That was well written. And here someone gave him a serious answer. This Richard Contini Jr. writes, "Because they have changed the formula. The CPI is a total scam. I haven't done the calculations because I'm too lazy, but my informed estimate is the true inflation is close to 18%. And shit's going to get wild in this next year. Get debt free. Get your cash into hard assets, and good luck." Well, we're all about those things on this channel. Here we had another great response from a user. They write, "During the Clinton administration, the government changed how they calculate inflation to hide the rate from the public. They took out some items like food and gas, and they added in luxury items like yachts to make inflation appear like less than it is." Oh, this is a funny response. This user writes, "Just use the left's commie core math and you'll see 40% or more means 8 times waffles. And if we multiply that by 3 genders and divide it by the rising sea levels that haven't risen, and then cancel 5% of congressional debt and pay the big guy 10%, inflation is actually 12, but it rounds out to 9. That was a good one. I wish this was Reddit where I could give this comment an award. That was pretty good. And this is another story that we've been tracking on my channel here. And I don't want to get too deep into this, but to just highlight that this did happen. According to Zero Hedge, Israel destroyed Iranian drone making plant in Syria. And we did see there was the accusation that Russia was attacking Ukraine with Iranian made drones. And I'll just read the top text here. The Israel Air Force reportedly destroyed an Iranian drone factory during a bombing raid in Syria territory. This was on Friday. coming at a moment that Iran manufactured drones are a focus of international attention for their alleged use by Russian forces in Ukraine. The attack is being described as the first such Israeli operation in Syria in a month. Prior to this latest attack, Israeli attacks on Syria had become almost weekly. But Israel's Haaretz, in describing this new operation, presented a more complicated picture of a drone manufacturing and weapons storage site not far from Lebanon and Israel's borders. Very interesting. Okay, on to the next. I got a few more things for us, and then we'll call it a night. Here we had this is a really funny meme here. If you sell, of course, the price goes up. If you hold, then hurry up and wait forever, the rest of your life. And if you buy, well, you're going to lose it right there. Ain't that the truth? It's always freaking true. Here I have an article from the Asia Times. I've been getting some really good news from this Asia Times lately. They do write, U.S.-Taiwan arms production plan seeks to deter China. Two sides mull joint weapons manufacturing as Ukraine war delays deliveries and Beijing cranks up its invasion rhetoric. Taiwan and the U.S. plan to jointly manufacture weapons to firm up Taipei's defenses against a possible Chinese invasion, a move that could spike already high and rising tensions around the self-governing island. Okay, so here is another example, and I'm not saying that everything revolves around Biden or the president, right? But this is just another example of behavior that I just did not expect from the Beijing Biden. And so any type of agreement like this would really run in contradiction to what I basically expected from the Biden administration. We've seen the deal with the Fed going rogue. We've seen the deal with we've seen the deal with the economic warfare that the U.S. is escalated against China in preventing them from attaining the important computer chips they need for their very high-end computer processing equipment. And I couldn't really ask myself, well, is Biden doing the right thing here? No, it's a very much more complicated picture than that. And what really concerns me the most right here is we're already moving U.S. troops into Ukraine, putting them in the line to directly join the conflict, and that would make us one of the belligerents in a potential war, and that I am 1,000% against. So it's a mixed bag, but there's definitely some things there that make you scratch your head. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I said this earlier, but let me just demonstrate with the headline real quick in case I didn't explain it clearly. Here's another article, and this one is also from the Asia Times. They're saying that Russia's dirty bomb claim lights the nuclear fuse. Moscow is likely fabricating the cause to use tactical nuclear weapons in an apocalyptic last gasp to win its losing war. And we definitely have competing narratives there. Someone ain't telling the truth, but according to the West and many Western outlets, that Russia is losing, they're humiliating themselves, that they're soon going to use very, very big and frightening weapons in a final attempt to save themselves from humiliation. But at the same time, we are in the age of informational warfare. We do see that there's plenty of evidence that Russia is doing quite well in this war, and that they are pretty comfortable where they are, and that they are in firm control. For example, I've seen the reports about the loss of life, and it seems like there is no dispute there that the Ukrainian forces have lost up to 10 times as many lives as the Russian forces, and that the idea is that Russia's goal is not to capture as much territory as possible, but to take the key areas and push forward into the other areas and then fall back afterwards. But this is pure conjecture for me. I know very little about this. But once again, it's really interesting to tease apart all the contradicting narratives that are surrounding this thing. And here, stuff that we've already covered, but I'm just going to always cover this again. It's very important. 63% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, including half of six-figure earners. And this is old data, and I'm glad that they're republishing this again, because To me, it's important that this stays on the forefront of our minds, and we'll just read a couple of key highlights from here. With persistent inflation eroding wage gains, the number of Americans living paycheck to paycheck is at a historic high. Almost half of those earning $100,000 or more are just getting by. As rising prices continue to outpace wage gains, families are finding less cushion in their monthly budget. And I'll cap off that topic with a tweet from Unusual Wells, who writes, credit card debt in the US hits an all-time high of $930 billion, according to the Federal Reserve. Michael Gayed, we have to have a Michael Gayed tweet every day because it's just so many fire tweets. He writes, China crashed and the US stocks don't care. There are a number of things happening and people are disregarding how incredible. Ponzi Finance asks, what negative catalyst is coming that required this orchestrated cushion? That is the eternal question. Very, very good question there. And with that, I believe it's time to conclude the show. I have so much material that I could have easily gone a whole other hour, but we'll cap it off right there and we'll leave ourselves plenty of things to talk about tomorrow. So I do thank you for joining me, and I hope that I provided you with some interesting and valuable information tonight. And as always, I do hope that you are in good health. And if you're not in good health, that you do get better soon. Thank you for joining me on this show, and I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back every day. We're going to keep doing the news, and I appreciate you, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.